In the face of mounting pressure from the United States, Britain, and Germany, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu remains unyielding in his opposition to what these allies envision as the future of Gaza, a transitional government overseen by the Palestinian Authority and the eventual coexistence of a Palestinian state alongside Israel. This stance, reinforced just hours after the army acknowledged shooting 3 Israeli hostages in Gaza as they held up a white flag, further fuels consternation and anger among Israelis. In response, Netanyahu appears to be attempting to shift the narrative, proudly declaring that he prevented the establishment of a Palestinian state in the past and vowing to persist in doing so. At a news conference held on Saturday night, Netanyahu seized the opportunity to assert, "I'm proud that I prevented the establishment of a Palestinian state because today everybody understands what that Palestinian state could have been." He explicitly linked the situation in Gaza to the potential consequences if Israel had succumbed to international pressures, allowing a similar state on the West Bank to materialize. Despite facing public outcry over Hamas's military buildup and invasion of Israel under his leadership, Netanyahu is strategically appealing to Israelis who harbor deep mistrust toward Palestinians and reject the notion of a two-state solution as perilous. As the conflict persists with no resolution in sight, casualties continue to mount, hostages remain in Gaza's custody, and Israel's main Western allies sharpen their criticism of Netanyahu, examining possibilities beyond his leadership. The recent incident, wherein Israeli soldiers shot hostages instead of rescuing them, serves as a catalyst for those arguing that the relentless military campaign, encompassing bombing and street fighting, not only endangers those still held captive but also tarnishes Israel's standing on the global stage. Netanyahu attributes the ongoing military pressure to both securing the release of hostages and achieving victory. In a bid to deflect criticism, he insists on the necessity of military pressure for both objectives. However, the delayed expression of regret for the deaths of the 3 Israeli hostages, coupled with accusations of war crimes and scrutiny of formal rules of engagement, leaves Netanyahu vulnerable to mounting criticism, even from within Israel. Nahum Barnea, a respected commentator in Israel, goes as far as characterizing the deaths as not just a tragedy but a war crime, emphasizing the clarity of international law on the matter. He urges a more critical introspection within Israeli society during this time of war, asserting that nothing good can come of blind love. Despite praising the army for its transparency in this instance, Barnea calls for accountability, advocating for disciplinary actions against the soldiers and their commander responsible for the deaths. As the conflict unfolds, President Biden's criticism of Israel's indiscriminate bombing of Gaza adds a layer of complexity to the international response. The foreign ministers of Britain and Germany aligned themselves with the U.S. plan for a post-war Gaza, urging Israel to discern more effectively between terrorists and civilians while endorsing negotiations with the Palestinians toward a two-state solution. These developments, contrary to Netanyahu's objectives, align more closely with the vision that he seeks to forestall. Netanyahu's overt political maneuvering amid the ongoing war draws sharp criticism, both domestically and internationally. His open politicking, especially against his main rival, Benny Gantz, within the emergency war cabinet intended to demonstrate national unity, is seen as shameless. Critics argue that Netanyahu is prioritizing political gains over addressing the immediate challenges posed by the conflict. In the midst of this complex political landscape, calls for fresh negotiations to secure the release of hostages intensify, driven by families of hostages and the broader public. Demonstrations gain momentum, underlining the urgency of reaching a resolution. While Hamas insists on halting negotiations until Israel ceases its Gaza war, back-channel talks facilitated by Qatar and Egypt persist, exploring the possibility of a broader deal involving more hostages and high-profile Palestinian prisoners. The recent killing of hostages accentuates the tangible risks faced by those still held captive, adding impetus to the prisoner exchange movement. Analysts suggest that this development may compel Netanyahu and other ministers to consider a higher price for a potential prisoner exchange. As the situation evolves, the intricacies of Israeli politics and its impact on the ongoing conflict continue to shape the narrative, both within Israel and on the international stage.